This is Alana Shore for TPM Media. We are here with the esteemed chairman of the House Financial Services Committee, Congressman Barney Frank of Massachusetts. On Friday, the House began debating your TARP oversight bill, setting strict conditions on the terms of the second round of the bailout. But the Senate has no plans to take up a similar bill, meaning that your bill, which is fantastic, won't ultimately have the force of law. You and Chairman Dodd have spoken about the need to trust the president-elect to abide by the conditions that he has vowed to use the money by. Do you think Congress has a duty to act legislatively, however, even though this president is far more trustworthy than the last?
I would prefer that, but the way it works is this. We're not talking about trust in general. Frankly, if we completely trusted the president, we wouldn't even have done the bill that we're doing in the House. It's fairly specific. And when we say trust the president, we don't mean that we think he, Barack Obama, is going to be engaged in double dealing, but we're recognizing the pressures that come on the president and an administration, and we want to make sure we have some strong counter pressures in terms of putting conditions on these financial institutions. If there were to be, for some reason, a failure on the part of the Obama administration to carry this out, I don't mean to suggest that we think they're going to be double dealing, but you have to, as you say, act as if a worst case might assume. That bill will be pending in the Senate and they could pass it quickly. In other words, we're going to pass the bill. The Senate's not going to defeat it. It's not going to go away. It will be pending in the Senate. It'll be kind of a sword of Damocles hanging over the administration. So it is our insurance. If the administration was somehow to argue, look, we changed our mind, we're not going to do foreclosure relief, I think you'd see the Senate pass that bill within a very short period of time.
So this could end up being leverage, again, not to assume the worst-case scenario.
No, that's fair. It is leverage. It is leverage that we don't think is necessary, but it does no harm, and it's better to have it than not. To some extent, we're all borrowing here, and it's very common in politics for what I call the Geraldine theory. Your viewers, many of them may be too young to remember the comedian Flip Wilson. But Flip Wilson was a very funny African-American comedian who sometimes political correctness was more flexible then. He would become a very flamboyant black woman called Geraldine. And whenever Geraldine was confronted with some misdeed, she would say, "The devil made me do it." And I find that that's a common thing in human nature. We all like to be able to claim that the devil made us do it. Well, to make sure that President Obama is tough on these financial institutions, we're willing to be the devil that he can invoke.
The last amendment the House voted on Friday was from Congressman Patrick Murphy, unanimously adopted, to require the Fed to disclose more of the terms and details of the mortgage-backed securities purchase program. And this is something you have been looking into for a long time on your committee. But since the proposal won't be signed into law, the Fed has told MarketWatch and other outlets that it won't provide any details because, frankly, it has to be forced to. Is that something you plan to pursue, and do you think a subpoena might ultimately be necessary?
Well, I don't think a subpoena will be necessary because I think Chairman Bernanke will know better than that. This is an example of what I'm talking about. I think they've got some of these financial institutions saying to the Federal Reserve, "Oh, please, 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 don't out us." Well, I'm something of an authority on outing, and we are going to out them. And if the Federal Reserve has to say to these banks, "Well, we're sorry, but Congress made us do it," again, we're willing to be the lever. A couple of weeks ago, I called Chairman Bernanke and said, there's a great deal of concern in the country about this money that you're committing, whether it's adequately collateralized, what are your criteria? You have to address this in public. And he said, I understand. And so in February, I think the 10th of February now, we are going to have a public hearing that's going to begin the process of airing what's going on here.
Bloomberg News recently reported, and we followed up on by talking to some experts, that the Treasury could have gotten a better deal on the preferred stock purchases than 5%, which is what it got on most of them. Warren Buffett, for instance, is said to have gotten a far better equity stake for a much smaller purchase, obviously. Do you agree that Treasury could have driven a harder bargain? Because you were one of the first members to get out there and say the taxpayers need an equity stake. And if you do think they could have driven a harder bargain, do you plan on insisting on one for the second round?
Well, I'm a little ambiguous on this one. We're not a profit-making institution. Let's not liberals forget that. I generally don't want the federal government making profits on things. For instance, we're giving money to cities to buy up foreclosed properties and having bought them up, turn them over to other people. I don't want to get top dollar for those properties. I want to sell them for subsidized uses. So, no, I don't think we should treat ourselves like Warren Buffett.